Welcome to the Traidar, a Traitors podcast. I'm Matthew, a writer and Traitors superfan working in TV development. The Traidar features deep dives into every episode of English-speaking versions of the show, as well as interviews with contestants. And this series of the pod is dedicated to the Traitors UK Series 3. As well as all my brilliant guest co-hosts lined up for the season, you can be part of the podcast too by sending a voice message with any thoughts or questions on episodes to memo.fm slash the Traidar podcast. Lindsay joined me last time to discuss episode 1 of the new series. And continuing in the fashion of having a returning guest co-host, we have someone very special back on the podcast to dive into episode 2. Let's meet them. My guest today is MaJiKer. MaJiKer is a multi-platinum selling songwriter, producer, and creative coach. He lived in Paris for 13 years, where his work earned numerous awards, including French Grammys and the Mercury Music Prize of France. He's performed on Later with Jules Holland and Top of the Pops, has beatboxed at the proms, and performed as lead soloist in a concerto for beatboxer and orchestra. He also happens to be a Traitors superfan who has seen more versions of the show from all over the world than I have. Welcome, MaJiKer, also known to me as Matthew. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, Matthew, number one. This is Matthew, number two.
Welcome back. You last joined me to discuss Canada season 2, I believe.
hmm
Yes. It's a while back now, but and without any spoilers, how was the rest of the season? Because I think we spoke quite early on. How was the rest of Canada season 2 for you?
Yeah, it was good. I must say now the UK season is back. I'm like, come on now. I mean, it's so much better. Just the casting. I've always said this when you get these mixed casts of,
Mm,
reality stars and all of that. There's a certain energy they bring to it, and I just love the normal people casts. And I think the
yes.
BBC's pretty much the only franchise that is doing it with normal like civilians now, which is a
Um,
shame.
yeah, well, New Zealand. New Zealand has reverted to just all non-celebrities at this
True.
point, which is interesting. But I do agree with you. Yes, I love the cast, and so far they've seemed to have done a great job with it as well.
Yeah.
How did you enjoy episode 1?
Just amazing. It's so funny because like it's January, it's really cold. It's like, post Christmas, post New Year. And I was like, please don't disappoint me. I need this. I need a bit of joy. And that first episode was just golden. I mean,
Yeah,
already I'm 100% in. When there were 25 people, I thought there is no way I'm going to engage with this many people. I literally like love them all. Like I'm in 100% I'm in. They do this so well. The casting and the editing, it's like masterful.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm very surprised at myself that I sort of learned everybody's name pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Like I actually I didn't try to do that, but I sort of had everyone sussed by the end of the episode. So yeah, good job on them. Today, of course, we're discussing episode 2. Before we get there, it is time to set up our own game of deception and betrayal. This is the Traidar Traitor. The mission for Matthew and I from here on in is to tell a lie to one another. The lie has to be a fabrication or a made up fact, big or small, about the traitors, about ourselves, anything else. For example, I could lie to Matthew and say that Claudia Winkleman has just been awarded a damehood for services to good hair. However, I couldn't lie by saying I don't like Claudia's hair when in actual fact I'm obsessed with Claudia's hair. That would be a fake opinion. So we are looking for fake facts and fabrications rather than fake thoughts and feelings. At the end of the episode, we'll guess each other's lie, and listeners, you can join in too and see how good you are at traitor detecting. Matthew, are you ready to play the Traitor once again?
You know I am.
Let's do it. Our game begins now, and it is time for us to go ahead with episode 2 of the Traitors UK Series 3. We start with our usual, our little recap. What happened in episode one? What do we need to know? So the players all arrived at the castle, but not before three players, Jack, Fozia, and Alexander, chose to leave the train to help the group add money to their prize pot. Several players are keeping secrets about their identities, like, someone is pretending to be Welsh, before the traitors are even chosen. And when they are chosen, they are Mina, Linda, and Armani. Yin was the first player murdered. Focus on the round table seemed to be on Linda, mainly because Jake noticed her strange reaction to Claudia's use of the word traitors. And there's a bit of focus on Nathan for bringing up suspicions of Linda at the round table for the first time. Before we get into the votes, which are about to happen, I'll ask you as well, Matthew, do you reckon these three people who left the train carriages are coming back in some way?
I I'm really torn on that. It seems so because they didn't make too much of like you're gone, never see you again. Thanks for thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
They literally were left standing there in the middle of nowhere, and then the train departed. And I don't know because they kept on saying, "Oh well, we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I'll take the risk."
Hmm.
It's like I feel they're planting seeds. The only reason I'm hesitating is that they did exactly that in, previous seasons. So you think, well, are they going to just do that again? Like, oh, you get eliminated in the first episode, and then you come back a few episodes later. That feels almost a bit predictable, but maybe they'll come back in a different way. I think a lot of people are speculating they might come back, and then you have to pick one of them or some twist. They could be in the dungeon, there could be some kind of twist with it. So. I really want them to because these seem like three of the most interesting and engaging characters. So
Yeah.
crossing my fingers.
Yes, I'm with you on that. And even since I recorded the last episode with Lindsay, a couple of people have sent messages or left comments on YouTube. Some people are suggesting they're going to be like secret traitors, and there's going to be some really convoluted extra layer of. I don't think it's going to be that complicated. I think it'll be sort of fairly simple. Like they'll come back in a mission. They'll appear at the castle halfway through. But yeah, I'm thinking they're going to reappear at some point. We'll see. So we start, we ended on a cliffhanger. We were about to begin the votes. Here we go. Nathan is first. I'm going to go through the votes one by one because uh, there's something very interesting about the votes I thought here. Nathan votes for Linda, not really a surprise. Charlotte votes for Keith, which I was a bit surprised about. Really know his name is floating about. Maya votes for Anna, also a little bit of a surprise. She's not had that much focus. Kaz votes for Nathan. Ellen again says this thing that I'm going to talk about a lot in this episode. She says, I think there's a strong female traitor. I'm going for Linda. Jake votes for Linda, fairly obvious. Anna goes Nathan. Mina votes for Livy. Leanne votes for Charlotte. Leon votes for Francesca. I'm going through these all one by one because I was amazed at the split in votes. I think that's pretty unusual. Like from my memory, episodes one and two, or especially episode one, it's usually a fairly big majority that one person, everyone kind of jumps on a bandwagon and goes for it. I don't know if you thought that. I was so surprised at how many different, they were all going off in different directions here.
Yeah. I mean, I think there might be two reasons for that. One is they might have just seen other seasons and decided, well, we don't want to just do the sheep thing of like,
Mm,
like herd mentality. They
yeah,
might have said, well, let's just do our own thing. And secondly, if they are kind of more kind of game oriented, they might be thinking, hmm, let me plant some seeds. I think this one isn't a trap. I'm going to go for you know what I mean? Everyone's getting a bit more savvy about the game now. So the easiest thing in the world is to say, oh, it looks like the tide's going towards person X. Let's all just vote them. The fact they're not doing that means I think they're maybe playing a bit, I won't say smarter, but they're playing their own games.
yeah. When you used the phrase herd mentality there, it made me think there's a board game called, well, it's kind of a board game, card game called Herd Mentality. I played it New Year's Eve. I brought it with me. It's my favorite game. I highly recommend it. It's about voting in groups and guessing what the majority of people are going to say to certain questions. It's good fun. Um, yeah, what you said makes sense about maybe they've seen different seasons and they kind of don't want to do what people have done before because it doesn't always work out well. Although, and I'll probably come back to this later, I still think you probably should just vote in
Mm.
big groups if you want to blend in and not stand out too much and get
Yeah.
ahead. I kind of think. Just vote with everyone else. Just do the obvious thing. But maybe we'll get there.
Well, look what happened. Let me try and get this right. There's so many names, but I think was it Charlotte voted for Keith,
Yes.
and therefore that became a plot line
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
then affected the murder and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you're going to stand out, you're going to plant these little seeds that's going to give the traitors ammunition for their murders.
Yes. And we'll definitely talk more about this thing that Charlotte voting for Keith and the fallout from it. So up we go on. We're about halfway through. Dan, he says he was going to vote for Anna, but now he's switched to Nathan at the last minute. Linda votes for Jake, in sort of retaliation. On one hand, okay, that goes along with this. She's created this idea that she is suspicious of him because he's going so hard for her. I also wondered, should she have just gone for Nathan? Like, wasn't he the most? I mean, we're relying very much on what we're seeing in editing. We don't really know what the full discussions were, but I wondered if, to save herself, she should have just vote for Nathan because it seems like a lot of other people are going to do that. Anyway,
Mm.
Livy votes for Ellen. Keith votes for Nathan, and he says, "Sorry, mate, love you." And it's just one of those funny classic things that the people say on these shows after knowing each other for about 48 hours. It's not just Keith, lots of them are telling each other they love each other. It always makes me laugh. Tyler votes for Linda. So at this point, we've got Linda on four, Nathan on four, and then a bunch of other people with these one random votes: Jake, Ellen, Keith, Anna, Livy, Charlotte, and Francesca. Last five or six votes come in. Francesca goes Nathan, as does Joe. Lisa votes for Charlotte. Freddie votes for Ellen. There's only two left at this point. If Nathan gets one more vote, the deal's done. Linda would have to get the next two votes to create a tie. But the last two votes are Manny and Alex. They both go for Nathan. So Nathan has had it. In the great tradition of traitors, usually the first out is a faithful. So Nathan stands. He says, I've had the most amazing experience. You've all been amazing. I can confirm that I am a faithful. Off he goes. Everyone's gutted. They've got it all wrong. Well, not everyone. The traitors are obviously, quite happy about this. Claudia tells them, your first shot and you blew it. And she tells them that she has more bad news. The traitors will strike again and bids them sweet dreams, and off she floats. Linda, we get a little of a clip of her saying she's so relieved. She thought she was going. I think a lot of viewers thought that she was a goner at the
Mm.
end of that first cliffhanger. We see Mina crying a little bit at the round table. And she tells us she was worried about Linda, so her emotions were heightened, and she channeled that into something else. She just thought, well, I'll use this sadness and I'll pretend I'm crying about poor Nathan. I think she did a good job. Um, you know, not too bad. I think she's going under the Traidar so far. It is time for a bit of a debrief around the castle. So, what are their thoughts after roundtable? We've got Kaz. He's feeling very bad about Nathan. Now he's doubting his intuition. There are a group of them, including Armani and Mina, and they're discussing Charlotte's the strange thing she said at the round table, and this becomes a big deal. She says that she felt very relaxed when she knew she hadn't been chosen as a traitor. But then when she was questioned on it, she doubled back on herself and said, "No, no, no, I was nervous. I was nervous." Um, Ellen is worried. I'm going to come back to this a few times. Ellen says she's worried that she now has a target on her back because she made this comment about there be. She reckons there will be strong female traitors. I don't know about you, Matthew. I don't get what the big deal is about this. Like, it's such a vague comment.
Mm.
Everyone becomes obsessed with it. Like, why do you think there are strong female traitors? What do you know that we don't
Mm.
know? She doesn't know anything. She's just throwing a guess out there, and everyone becomes obsessed with it. I don't know if
Yeah.
do you see something that I don't see?
Well, look, she's doing it for this. We're probably going to get into this, but this whole like metagaming, which is saying, hang on a minute, I think I'm right in saying there was only one female traitor on the whole of the last
Yeah,
season.
that's right.
And so, what are you going to do? Of course, you're going to have at least two or three female traitors. But she can't really say that. She can't say, oh, well, last season. So she's kind of, just coming with her metagame. Fair enough. But I think she did explain it quite well at breakfast, actually, because she said, I just realized after I said that if there were male traitors, then they might get rid of me or they might not get rid of me. Suddenly, I've just become a target because I said that. Um, so, I mean, but the thing is, like, again, this is the whole point of these early stages of the game. Do you say stuff or do you not? And we're going to get there with Armani. Do
Yeah.
you? do you just shut up or do you try and put stuff out there? I think it's a fine line. I think you've got to put something out there.
Yeah.
I mean, Ellen is a very unusual player in this game, incredibly emotional. Goodness me, like it's a lot.
It is a lot, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at roundtable. It's it's funny because I watched the episode twice. The first time I felt really sorry for Ellen,
Mm.
and I thought, oh God, can't you all see she's clearly a faithful, leave her alone. And the second time I watched it to take lots of notes, I was a bit more annoyed with her, and I was sort of
Yeah,
like,
same.
pull yourself together. But yeah, we'll get there with Ellen and her emotional reaction at roundtable. Meanwhile, we head to Traitor's Tower. The traitors have a lot to debrief on. Linda's worried that Armani had made this comment about how an older woman would be a great traitor, and she was worried that, this might shine light on her. Mina and Armani claim they both talk about, the sisterhood's strong, everything's on track. I don't think Mina really believes that, but I think she's just keeping up appearances for the sake of
Mm.
Armani right now. They talk about their murder options for tonight then. Linda reckons, well, they can't go for anyone who voted for her because that would be too obvious. Which I think that's fine at this point. Yeah, that sure makes sense. Don't murder off Jake. It would look too obvious, perhaps. Unless you want to start getting into sort of double bluffing and
Yeah.
doing and all these layers of deception. But they're
Mm.
just going for the obvious. Let's just make it look like I'm a faithful and I didn't have the chance to murder any of these people. They talk about Keith. They say he's popular. He's probably not going to get banished because everybody likes him. But then Linda says this thing, and you've referenced this. Linda says, "Well, Charlotte did vote for Keith, so it would make her look really suspicious." I'm not getting this, and even by the end of the episode, I mean it sort of does end up working, but I don't understand the logic behind it. If Charlotte was a traitor, why would that make her vote to banish Keith and then murder him? I
Yeah.
again, am I missing something? I don't understand it.
No, no, I think Linda is oversimplifying there
Yeah.
again. And it's true, like as the seasons go on, we're going to start to get into this inception layers of oh well, I wouldn't do that if I was a traitor. Oh no, I did it, and then I did the thing. Got I think at this point, even though we're only in season three, I think you should just get rid of who you want to get rid of
Okay.
because then it's how you spin it. You can say,
Yeah.
"Oh, they accused me yesterday. Well, of course I wouldn't have got rid of them." You can just double bluff it. Like, so
Yeah.
just get rid of who you want to get rid of.
Yeah.
I don't think there are that many clues. I've watched enough seasons now to know. I don't think you can get that many clues by who's murdered. I really don't.
I think you're right. I think you can get clues from, once you find a traitor and you banish them, you can look
Mm,
back at who they voted for at roundtables, and that might be helpful. But yeah, I think figuring it, yeah, based on murders alone, you're probably not really going to get anywhere, because
mm,
you just don't know what the traitor strategy is at all.
yeah.
Uh, the next person they discuss is Leanne. Armani says that she has a tight bond with some of the other players. That might be a bad thing. You don't want groups of people getting together and swaying one another's votes. They talk about Freddie for the same reason. Of course, we get a gratuitous shower shot of Freddie, which Studio Lambert really love to do in The Traitors. I mean, I'm not necessarily complaining. It just makes me laugh every time.
I I wasn't on his Instagram or anything like that. But he might have posted a comment saying, "Sorry, mom, sorry, mom, for the shower shot for the shower scene." I
It
thought that
just,
was very sweet. He's like,
yeah.
the first thing he thinks is, "Sorry, mom."
Yeah. It's just a sort of bit of a Love Island effect or something.
Hmm.
It's I think it's so camp they kind of get away with it. It's so
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Well, it's very knowing, isn't it? It's because, they did it a little bit in the first seasons and now they're like, okay, we're just waiting for it now.
I just wish I was sort of in on those conversations and filming like, right, Freddie, we need a shot of you doing something. Could you just get in the shower? Like
Mm.
and be like, okay. Or maybe it was a
Yeah.
suggestion. I don't know.
I mean, if
Anyway.
he still wants to be the first black prime minister, all bets are off the way politics is going. But I mean, that shot will be used
Yes.
until the end of time.
I would love it if Freddie became an actual sort of MP at some point and we had this golden moment to look back on. So
Hmm.
Freddie, I'm voting for you. Uh, again, they talk about Freddie being a part of an alliance, apparently with Leanne and Maya. The Traitors don't like that. And so they make the decision. We, of course, don't really see who they've chosen. Mina says these are getting easier and easier. She's loving the murders. She's really enjoying her role. And they deliver their vote to Claudia. I This is it's a really small point, but I just love the theater of them sort of writing it down and handing it to Claudia, and she
Mm,
puts it on the chair. It just I just love it. I just love it all. It's just so cherishing the game of it all. Like it's not embarrassed to be just playing a big silly game.
yeah.
It's good fun.
I think it's a shame that they don't have the illusion because BBC in the UK we have this whole thing of like honesty in TV production, so they can't pretend that they actually sleep in the castle. That's why they have to go.
Mm.
They go to they're taken to their own lodgings, which is probably just like a travel lodge or something. It's like some cheap hotel somewhere. Um, because in other versions they actually slip it under the door. Or oh, hang on, we missed that the whole camera zooming in. Was that in Australia? Camera zooming in murder
Yeah.
mystery, someone's actually coming at me, and the terrified look. Oh, that is the best. Can't we bring that back, please? The terrified
Yes.
look behind the shoulder.
One of the many reasons I miss Traitors Australia, RIP.
Mm,
Yeah, they had these sort of shots of the players in the room, like like turning to look as if someone, and like sometimes like a candle would blow out. I loved all that. Some people
and
thought it was silly. No, it was
I
fun.
think I sent you a screenshot, didn't I, of the last Swedish traitors, Traidar now, which was so good. I mean, I keep telling you, you need to watch it. It was so good. And one of the first murders is quite a famous actor, and he's literally peering under his door. And they managed to get a shot where there was enough of a gap under the door that he's looking terrified under the door. I'm like, okay, this is high camp. Well done, Sweden.
I will be watching Sweden. I have actually started to make a list of recommended international traitors seasons that people have suggested I watch. Sweden is top of my list on a little Word document, so I shall be visiting it after this. Uh,
Jättebra. Very good.
it's time for breakfast the next day. We've got the first group arriving. They all feel very much in the dark about what's going on. Maya admits she's worried about her sister again. She says the energy's off. She knows something is not right, which makes me, well, I would say it makes me worried for Armani. Of course, Maya could figure out that Armani's a traitor and then just not do anything about it. We'll see.
Mm,
Armani then arrives in the next group. Of course she does, she's a traitor, followed by Mina in the next group after that. And again, Mina talks a little bit about enjoying lying and she's really feeling her way into this role she has. Ellen arrives in the next group and she gets very emotional. She you referenced this before. She talks about how she was sure that she'd actually made herself a target because of her comment about female traitors. So she's amazed that she survived the night. Livy and Anna notice this though. They're sort of picking up on Ellen being very emotional. And then they say, well, at the round table, she also was nervous one minute, but then when she spoke, she was really confident. They don't trust Ellen at all. Linda and Joe arrive next, which means that Keith, Leanne, and Freddie are the last to arrive, which is not much of a surprise to us. We thought those were the people
mm,
under threat from the traitors. It does mean, though, Matthew, for the second time, the producers are still doing this thing where they leave the
yeah,
faithful until the end. If the players are really savvy, they might pick up on that and think, hey,
yeah.
the last people to arrive are pretty much always faithful. Are they going to change it as the season goes on, do you think? Going to switch things
I
around?
mean, they better because literally that's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh, great. So if I'm playing this game, I go, there are three faithful. I suppose it's just that I think in the last season they did switch it up a little bit. So maybe there's the thing, oh, well, we can't be 100% sure. But I mean, probability, if you were putting a bet, you'd say, pretty sure these final three people are all faithful. Great. I'll write that in my mental notebook and then I'll take
Mhm.
that forward in the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's also just we're only 2 episodes in. Maybe they're going to
Mm.
completely throw it out the window for the next 10 episodes. In other versions we've seen from other countries, they do definitely mix it up and play around with it. Sometimes it's a traitor who walks in last. Um, but even if you're a player, you can't bet on it. You don't know for sure what's going on. So I guess even if the players have watched other series and they think they know, you never really know. So you're still can't bet on it. The door knocks then, and Leanne arrives, followed by Freddie, meaning Keith is a goner. We get a flashback. The traitors tell us, he's a big character. Again, they focus on how it will make Charlotte look bad because she voted for him at round table, and I'm still not really sure about that. But hey, Keith then receives his letter and he delivers a classic Traitors line. Matthew, I don't know if you noticed this a lot in Traitors. He tells us, I was probably murdered because the traitors felt I was a threat. Just, it's just, I think if I was murdered, I would not be saying that. I'd just be like really
Mhm.
annoyed and like, why don't they like me? I don't think I'd be going, well, I was a threat. And he goes on and he goes, I was likable. I was a father figure. I was a friend. Keith, maybe calm down a little bit. You don't know.
Yeah.
But seems like a very nice man. Good luck, Keith. Back to breakfast then. Everyone's shocked about Keith's murder. And Leanne very quickly says, hey, didn't he get brought up last night at round table? And Linda, doing her best acting beside her, says, oh, yes. By who? It was Charlotte. It just Linda's so quick on it, like she immediately remembers it was Charlotte. All eyes are then suddenly on Charlotte. I'm still not really sure why. And Leanne also tells Linda she thinks Armani is a bit too confident. Then comes this moment in the episode that makes me want to crawl under the table, just curl up in a ball, because Kaz decides to give a speech. He wants to raise a toast. And as soon as he stood up, I just thought, no, no, stop. This is the worst way to draw attention to yourself. Please stop this.
Mm.
Again, you seem like a lovely man. Don't do this to yourself. He proposes a toast to Keith. He wants to say the word faithful in Welsh. I don't really know what that's got to do with Keith, but he wants to say it. Even Armani, who is a traitor, beside him is like, Keith, you maybe don't want to do that, babes. It makes me think of if we cast our mind back to Australia Series One, there was a man called MK, and he
MK,
likes to
yeah,
give a speech at breakfast, and it just made everyone so wary of him. Like, why
yeah.
are you doing this?
Mm.
I'm worried. I'm worried for Kaz.
I mean, the irony is that if you were a traitor, you would never do that. So
Yes,
it actually is a very faithful thing to do.
I guess, yeah.
I've got a Welsh word. The Welsh word is tup, which is spelled, it's almost impossible to say, tup, which is spelled TW with a little accent on it, P. No vowels allowed. We don't need any vowels. Tup. And this Welsh word means thick, which for American listeners means dumb. Like it means that thick means something different in America. In the UK, thick means not very intelligent. So tup is a Welsh word that means that was not very bright. So there you go. That's my little bit of Welsh for you.
Okay, you're calling Kaz Toop.
I'm calling him tup.
Poor Kaz, but in this instance, perhaps yes. Claudia then arrives and she uses Big Tall Tyler to take down the portrait of Keith. And she asks them who's excited about her first mission. And they all clap. I'm not quite as enthusiastic. And she tells them we're going to start things off with a bang. Oh, what could this mean? I laughed so much at Maya, like, she says shooting. And some of them make like this gun signal. I'm like, they're are you probably not going to be shooting? Like, I mean, maybe we've had crossbow challenges before. I just had this hilarious image of Claudia like gathering them all together. Today, you're going to shoot someone. Like, that's probably not what's
I
going to
would
happen.
put nothing past her, honestly.
So, before we get to the mission, though, it's time for some more discussions around the castle. Armani starts spreading Charlotte's name around for this toop reason they've come up with. We get a lot of Tyler talking about being an old soul again. It's first time I watched this, I didn't think much of it. Second time I watched it, I wondered why Tyler's getting so much airtime here. I
Hmm.
don't know. It's maybe only like 30 seconds, but he talks about he's an old soul. He likes watching birds. He's never had a girlfriend, and I sort of think I don't care. Like that sounds really brutal. I'm sorry, Tyler. You seem like a very nice man. But I sort of thought, why are they including this? It doesn't result in anything later in the episode. It's nothing to.
Hmm.
It just seemed like such bland information to get so much focus? Is it just because he's kind of a funny character and it's just a little bit of
Yeah.
reality? Maybe I'm reading way too much into it.
I
This,
I took it like that. Yeah, it's just literally saying, okay, we've got because he hadn't really established himself. I hadn't really got a handle on him at all.
mm,
So and I mean, it'll either be for one or two reasons. One, because he becomes incredibly important later in the game, so they're establishing him now, or because he's not long for this world, and so we better get out his quirky
mm,
stuff
I
now. We
guess.
know how reality TV works. It's going to be one of those two.
Yeah, again, I'm being very, very sort of over the top analytical. I did think he's either going to be really important or he's going to get murdered soon and they want us to feel bad for him. So I don't know, something like that. Maybe none of that. We move to the kitchen. We've got Mina bringing up Charlotte using this word relaxed, talking about how she fell, and then Charlotte has to defend herself. She says, "No, I just was relaxed in that moment because I realized I hadn't been chosen as a traitor. I don't mean I'm relaxed in general." And again, you said you talked about Kaz, and you said, if Kaz actually was a traitor, he probably wouldn't give up and he wouldn't stand up at breakfast and give a toast. And I thought the same thing about Charlotte. I thought, well, if she was a traitor, surely she wouldn't make such a silly mistake and tell
Mm.
people, "Hey, I felt so relaxed afterwards." I think, in general, the traitors are trying so hard to appear like nervous, worried faithfuls. So, if anything, this would make me think, well, it was a silly thing of Charlotte to say. She probably just is a faithful. I wouldn't be. I mean, obviously, Mina is a traitor, so she's going to pick up on anything she
Mm.
can. But um, I just don't understand why everyone is suspicious of Charlotte because of this.
Do you know what? I think I do. And this is just a theory. I think it's because she's putting on the accent. Now, they don't know that, but
Mm,
if you are constantly having to think about what you're saying because you're trying to put on the accent, you are going to, in some very subtle way, you're going to come across as slightly disingenuous, like you're overthinking things, like you're kind of interrupting yourself. And I know the Welsh accent comes very natural to her because she's her mum's Welsh, but still, you see how different her voice is in the confessionals.
hmm.
She is thinking about every single thing she says.
Yeah,
That is it's such a bad call. And she even admits, doesn't she, later, that, oh,
yeah,
this is not really working. So I think if people are feeling something, maybe that's what they're feeling. They're feeling something's not quite right
yeah.
about
Okay.
Charlotte.
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, David Bloomberg, who's often on the podcast with me, regular listeners, you'll know David, reality TV expert, Survivor, Big Brother US expert, Traitors expert. David is watching over in the States and he sent me a message last night. And the first thing he sent a message about was, why is someone pretending to be Welsh? It was the main thing that he was like so confused about. Yeah, and right after this, Charlotte does then have a little confessional clip and says, maybe I shouldn't have put on a Welsh accent. Yep. Armani's now in the kitchen too, and she's sort of jumping on Charlotte as well, and Charlotte gets a bit upset. I do feel bad for her. I think she seems like a lovely person, despite the fake Welsh accent. She seems really sweet, and she just is thinking, "Oh God, I've messed up." We get Livy. Livy thinks that she needs to use her voice at round table. She's still worried about Ellen's shifting emotional state. She voted for Ellen at the round table at the first banishment as well. Francesca asks Ellen to explain this female traitor's comment. Again, I wonder if it's just because it's so early in the game, there's not really anything to go on concrete yet at all. So maybe they just have to pick up on anything at all. And if that's one thing that stood out about someone, maybe you do just go for that. I still think it's a dumb reason, but yeah, maybe there's nothing else.
Yeah, but don't forget that, again, I'm kind of metagaming it here, but think about the editors. Like, we have to see what's going to happen to Ellen. Well, you need to be planting those seeds. So you need
Yeah.
to be, I think they made a lot out of her comments. They
Mm,
keep showing her getting emotional and people questioning her because of the storytelling, because of the narrative that they're trying to give, just to give
yeah.
the episode a bit of shape, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. It's time for our mission then, which we're all very excited about. We hear a bit more from Leanne about she's in the Jeep and she says, I have to pretend not to be too athletic because she has this military background. She's trying to keep it a secret from everybody. They arrive at this huge traitor's figure. Claudia tells us it's her boyfriend. It's actually very cool, actually. I was pretty impressed with it. And in front
Yeah,
of
me
it, there are
too.
lots of barrels with explosive symbols on them and a big giant detonator. I wonder what's going to happen. The mission is that there are I'm not going to talk through every step of the mission. It's fairly straightforward. There are crates around the woods. To open the crates, they have to answer number-based questions. Correct answers open the boxes. Incorrect answers make the contents explode. 10 of the crates contain £1,000 in chests. Others contain gunpowder. If they open a gunpowder crate, they have to scoop it up in buckets, deposit it in a big giant barrel, and after 30 minutes, Claudia will detonate the barrel. If there's enough gunpowder, it will bring down giant Claudia's boyfriend. And if that happens, there will be no murder tonight. So it therefore means the traitors may want to sabotage this mission if possible to make sure that they
Mm.
can murder someone else. They split up into teams. Claudia gives them maps, off they go. I'll read a few of the examples of the questions. It's things like how many players are wearing glasses in their portrait? How many stars are on the round table? They get this one wrong. How many paintings are on the main stairwell? It's all sort of observational stuff. What have you noticed so far in the game? Armani tries to do a bit of sabotage on the painting question, doesn't really work. Linda is also she thinks about sort of playing the age card to not get the gunpowder back in the buckets. I don't think she tries that much, and I think she is finding it quite tiring anyway, so she's not really pretending. Leon briefly mentions it. I don't think he considers it too seriously, but he does wonder, maybe she's a traitor and she's deliberately going really slowly. But she is 70. Meanwhile, Freddie thinks that Ellen is complaining too much about the gunpowder, so he wrongly thinks that she's a traitor sabotaging the task. I immediately called it when I was watching this. As soon as I found out what the mission was, I thought, there's no way they're going to lose this mission. Like, there is
Mm.
no way Studio Lambert are building this giant traitor that could potentially explode for it not to explode. Like, they
Yeah.
want to give us this big visual, exciting moment that they can use in trailers and things. We
Mm.
need to see it topple over. It would be so anticlimactic for the first mission for them to fail and that big statue just stands there and nothing happens. So I sort of was like, okay, they're gonna pass, right? They do. Claudia does lots of shouting at them as she does. It's always fun to see her get involved. She presses the detonator. Kaboom! Giant boyfriend falls. Hurrah! No murder tonight for the faithful. Um, I I actually did want them to. I knew they wouldn't, but I wanted them to fail just because I want another murder. I want to see who the traitors choose. Any thoughts on the mission at all, Matthew? How do you feel?
I was really kind of processing the fact that it's become a bit more like that show The Mole now. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like yeah, sabotaging the task. We've never really had that before, have we? Like the traitors have to sabotage a task in order to get an advantage. Sometimes they have to play dumb, like, oh, I don't know. Not sure. But this was the first time I think ever, possibly in any season I've seen, where the traitors actively I might be overstating that. Anyway, I've watched a lot of seasons. I've watched like 25 seasons. But this really stood out. I've never heard of the murder being cancelled by them winning the
mm,
task. So
yeah,
that was interesting. I think in terms of the kind of storylining of the episode, it's more interesting when it throws up weird suspects. So if people are just not very good at it, you go, oh, I mean, we had that on an American season, didn't we, with the famous Kate, who was just throwing stuff all over the place and sabotaging people. You must be, and some people thought you must be a traitor. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. No, she's an attention seeker. That's
yeah,
a different kind of role. Um, but yeah, with this one, I thought, I mean, Mina and I think maybe even Armani just kind of said in confessionals, there wasn't much I could do. I
yeah.
can't really sabotage it. Why would you? Because if you were like, oops, oops, you'd be like, whether or not you're a traitor, everyone would then think you are. So, but I
Yeah,
do think it was a very interesting twist. I enjoyed that because it just gave a little bit clues or false clues. That's what we want in this game to make it a bit more interesting.
yeah, I agree. I quite like that there's a slight opportunity to sabotage if you wish to do so. And it's not just for money or for a shield, which I'm assuming will come back this season. It's to cancel a murder. Yeah, I like that twist. Something a bit new. In the end, they bank £6,000 here, which means that the total prize fund is now 13,000. We get a little bit of we see them in the jeeps on the way back to the castle. Ellen's talking about how she cried at breakfast this morning again. And like you said, I guess they need to build these little clips in because it's going to mean something later on in the story. If I was her, I would just stop talking about it. But hey, she doesn't know what's coming. Freddy's in his Jeep. And he again he talks about Ellen maybe not pulling her weight in the task, which makes him a bit suspicious. So clues are being dropped for us as viewers that Ellen is going to have a big spotlight on her, perhaps come the round table. Back at the castle then, Armani's talking about Charlotte again. She tells Anna she hasn't heard anyone mention her. I think she's trying to form a little alliance with Anna. She's trying to be her friend, like, oh, hey, nobody's mentioned you. You're fine. But Anna, sort of in return, tells Armani, well, you need to be careful. Maybe you're making yourself a target because you're quite a sort of strong leader. You're leading too obviously. Maya, which makes me think Anna herself isn't actually suspicious of Armani, and she thinks that Armani's her friend and she's trying to help her out. Maya warns Charlotte that people are coming for her tonight. And Charlotte says, well, I've got someone in mind, and it's Cass. Yeah, I think he's really charming and lovely. And she says he'd make a fantastic traitor because he's so charming and nice. Now, in the previous episode of the podcast, I talked about this phrase, they'd make a good traitor, and I said I'll come back to it in episode two. So I will stick to my word and I will come back to it in episode two. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Matthew. It's 2 episodes in, I've noticed it at least 10 times, different players saying, oh, I think they're a traitor because they'd be a good traitor. I think you might be a traitor because you'd make a fantastic traitor.
Mm.
I I don't know why it bothers me so much. I think it's just poor reasoning. Unless what they're doing is thinking that if they're trying to sort of get into the producers' heads and they're thinking, well,
Mm.
if I was one of these people standing on set behind the cameras and I was picking the traitors, I can see why they would pick you. Other than that, telling someone, oh, you're very clever, so you'd make a good traitor, therefore you are a traitor, I don't think is sensible reasoning. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think what they're saying, I think they're doing this metagaming of saying, well, if I were the producers, I would want
Mm.
to pick someone who is, yeah, cool, calm, and collected, has this kind of, I'm going to bring in a new word here, perfidious. Do you know that word?
No.
I'm, I, I was going to say, I promise I'm not making up these words, but maybe I am making up these words.
Maybe.
That's for you to decide.
Mm.
Perfidious, I learned this word because I didn't know it. I speak fluent French, but sometimes a word comes up. I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means. And when one of the traitors left, she said, ah, il y a bien des perfidies ici. There are definitely perfidies here. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I tried to kind of Google it, and it turns out the word is perfidie is some mythical or ancient person who, like a kind of Machiavellian, who is like a traitor, who's like treacherous. And then I looked it up, and we have the word in English, perfidious.
Okay.
So anyway, if you are cool, calm, and collected, you could make a perfidious person in the game. And yeah, so I think from a kind of meta point of view, it does make sense. They can't say that on screen. They can't go, oh, I think the producers at Studio Lambert have probably you can't say that. So they're just going, I think they're hinting at it. The
Mm.
only other thing I could think is that people like Ellen, who are all over the place emotionally, blowing hot and cold, crying, getting emotional, you'd think, well, that you're probably not a traitor because you would really try and rein it in and you would try and put on a facade of being cool and collected and maybe sitting back and just being composed and being smart. So I do kind of get it. I mean, let's face it, in the early rounds, they had nothing to go on,
Mm.
nothing. And so I always think if I was in the game, everyone would think I was a traitor straight away because I'm quite, I'm a songwriter. I'm quite good with words, as has been shown today, because I've taught you two new words, one Welsh and one English maybe. Um, and drawing so much attention to these words, let's see how that plays out. I'm so perfidious, but I'm not at all. Um, so yeah, no, I think people would look at me and say, "Oh yeah, you're probably a traitor because you seem cool and collected. You're a bit quiet and calm, but you always have the right words. You always talk your way out of things. That's actually just kind of the way I am. I am good with words and stuff.
Yeah.
So I do think there's something in it. I think I slightly disagree with you. I think actually, when you've got nothing to go on, and the fact is, Kaz would make an incredible traitor. So I do kind of agree.
Yeah. I guess what surprises me is if that's what they mean, if they think, I don't know what to go on, so I'm going to try and guess who the game makers have picked. it just surprises me they include it in the edit so much because yeah, it's sort of giving us too much of a peek behind the facade, so we don't want to see the players theorizing about the production of the game.
Yeah, but
Maybe
they don't
that's why it
say
bothers me.
that.
They don't.
That's the
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I think we know that's what they mean because we're really into the game. I think most people would go that you just imagine like if you know, as if it was a murder mystery, you
Mm.
know, when you watch a drama, you say, oh, it could be the butler, oh, it could be the priest or whatever, you know. So I think that's how the production are taking it, and that's why they're including it. And also, how could you edit that out if they keep going, you would make a great traitor?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
That is an
if that's
argument.
the reason that they keep harking on, I guess you have to include it. Sure. Um, I am going to name this episode of the podcast something with the word perfidious in it. Whether or not it is a real word, I don't care. It will be the title of the episode. So elsewhere in the castle, we get a little bit of Kaz. He's theorizing about whether anyone was deliberately sabotaging the mission. And he did notice that some people like Armani were maybe getting things wrong. He doesn't seem to think it's deliberate enough to cause too much of an issue. Tyler is in this conversation, and in his MIV, his main interview, his confessional, he reveals actually he does now think Armani is a traitor. And back in the house, he takes Kaz aside and he says, I think Armani's a traitor. Look at her tonight at the round table. And he does make this good point. He says she's really loud. She's quite outspoken. Why haven't the traitors gotten rid of her yet? I mean, there only have been two murders, but okay, it's a fair point. Like she's such a strong leader type. Why is she still around? Wouldn't the traitors have picked off someone like? Okay, yeah, like I can see what he's thinking. That's yeah, and the thing is, he's right. He's got it. And he does then say this thing which I don't. He says to Kaz, "Oh, we could set a trap." But he doesn't really follow up on that unless I miss something. He sort of doesn't really explain what that trap's going to be. I don't know if he did have a plan and they kept it a secret from us, or if he doesn't really actually have a plan at all. I think Kaz even says, "What trap?" And there's not much more than that. We'll
Yeah, he
see.
needs to be careful here because it's too early. It's too early to be setting traps and doing this and that and all of that. Like he's really making himself a target.
Yeah. Hopefully he is only saying that to Kaz and not lots of other people, and
Mm,
he's got the measure of Kaz enough to think, well, he's not going to go and tell other people I said this, and I think I've got a good friend here. We'll see. But you're right. It could be very dangerous to do this.
mm.
It's time for the round table then. We get some little, mivs going in, little interview clips. Ellen talks about how she finds it frustrating that you just can't control how you're perceived in this game, of course. And she says, if I cry at the round table, and she goes on and says something else. And I sort of think, Ellen, you're almost manifesting it. Like, don't think about whether you're going to cry at the round table. You're going to make it happen. Get out of that headspace. Linda's still nervous because, of course, last night she gathered quite a few votes. She's worried, is that going to hang over to today? And Charlotte, of course, knows that there is a bit of heat on her going into. So here we go. We've got Claudia. She gives her dramatic speech, and she reminds them, there's not going to be a murder tonight. Can you make it a double blow for the traitors? Can you also get one of them out? Mina begins the discussion, which I thought was quite funny because last night it was Armani who started things off too. Is it wise for the traitors to speak up first? I don't know. Mina focuses on Charlotte. We suspected this would happen. All about Charlotte described herself as relaxed at round table after Claudia chose the traitors. Armani jumps in on Charlotte too, and she mentions the fact that she voted for Keith and then Keith got murdered. Leon speaks. He asks Kaz, well, what do you think? Everybody talks about you being so clever. So, what are your thoughts, clever doctor man? And Kaz also thinks Charlotte could be a traitor for the things that we were just talking about, I guess. He says, you've got the classic traits of a traitor. You'd make a good traitor. He doesn't really say what these traits are. I think he just means you seem quite pleasant and amenable and friendly and clever. So that would make you a good traitor. Charlotte then gets, a bit upset. She's having to defend herself again. She starts crying. She also singles out Cass in return. She says, for the same reasons, I think you would be a good traitor. You're very calm. You've got a lovely demeanor. Joe also picks out Kaz as a suspect because of the silly toast that he made at breakfast this morning. And Joe even says, I said to you when you did that, you better not be a traitor. And I thought there was a glimmer in your eye, and it made me think, actually, you were a traitor, and I found you out. Um, Linda does this thing, and Armani does this thing next that I am unsure. I think it's going to be a problem. Linda suddenly speaks up on behalf of Kaz and says, "No, Kaz isn't a faithful. I 100% believe Kaz is a faithful." Um, and Armani goes, "Yeah, yeah, I back that." Why are they doing this? Like, why?
Well, don't
I've got
forget.
one theory, but what do you think?
Well, don't forget, it's what we're being shown. So, there's probably a lot of people nodding. Who are they going to show? They're going to show the two traitors nodding and go, yeah, 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 no, no, no. Could have been that, like, seven different people did it and we
Hmm.
just saw them. It does look a little foolish, but then at the same time, you think, well, a faithful would go, oh, no, no, I don't think so. But it was interesting that it was picked up later that someone
Hmm.
said, Linda needs to stop saying 100%
Yeah,
not.
yeah. I think it's
Because
Jake.
yeah, you need to get in the mentality of saying, I do not know, and I will never know who the traitors and the faithful really are. It's impossible for me to know because I'm a faithful.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I did wonder if they. On one hand, I thought just if someone's got heat on them, just go along with it. Just be like, yeah, Kaz, I also think you could be a traitor, and just vote for him and get him going. But maybe it makes them look good if Kaz does get banished and stands up and goes, I'm faithful, and they go, I told you, I knew it. And then everyone goes, oh, we should have trusted Linda and Armani. Maybe it's that. It's I'll look good later when I'm proved right, mysteriously. Don't know.
Mm.
Uh, Leanne literally says Ellen's name. She says Ellen, and Ellen just starts crying. And Livy targets Ellen too. They talk about her shifting emotional state. And Ellen, she gets so upset. She's trying to defend herself. She says, I know that I come across very nervous. I've been trying to compose myself. I knew this was going to happen. Dan and Charlotte step in. They try and defend her. Others keep coming for her. Again, on one hand, I feel really bad for Ellen. On the other, I feel frustrated, and I think it's just a game. You need to control yourself. You signed up for this. You do need to compose yourself. On the other hand, you about 5 or 10 minutes ago, you said something, Matthew, that I agreed with. In general, this is a sort of sweeping generalization, but across the series, the people who do get very emotional and cry do actually tend to be faithful. Traitors usually are, really trying to keep it together and be composed and not necessarily calm. They can be very defensive, but yeah, usually the people who have these meltdowns, they're having a meltdown because they're faithful and people are accusing them of something that they're not. So
Mm.
maybe if when I first watched the episode, my thoughts were, can all these people clearly see she's a faithful? Like she's clearly genuinely upset because all this attention is on her. I would just sort of think, I mean, I might still vote for her because I just
Mm.
want to not get a traitor out yet, but I would sort of think, right, she's not actually a traitor. Maybe that's me with the benefit of being a viewer who knows everything.
Yeah, I think having watched many, many seasons of this show, I think generally speaking, meltdowns early on mean you're more likely to be a faithful because you're just overwhelmed by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And meltdowns much later in the game mean that because this has happened a few times. I think I've told you about it, where traitors have like lost the plot because it's the pressure. Like what by the time they get near the end of the series, I've seen a couple of like proper meltdowns, like almost stop filming. I'm having a panic attack kind of meltdown because they just can't keep lying to people the whole time.
Hmm.
So that's something to keep an eye out for.
Okay. Yes. There are a couple more comments before we go to the vote. Ellen again is asked about suspect she has. She says, "I just think it's a strong woman." Okay. It's a bit vague, but she does have a reason for thinking that based on maybe watching other series, especially the last one. Armani comes in again and defends Ellen. She goes, "I genuinely don't think you're a traitor." And again, I wondered, is she doing this because she knows Ellen's probably about to get banished, and she can then say, "Told you so. I'm a great faithful. Look how clever I am." I don't know, or look how trustworthy I am. I don't know. It's time for the vote. Again, I'll go through them one by one and sort of top things up as we go. Francesca begins. She votes for Kaz and says again, "You'd be such a good traitor." Joe also votes for Kaz. Lisa throws out this sort of quite random vote for Francesca, and she goes, I don't have no idea. It's just a guess." Francesca does not look happy about it. And Francesca also got one vote in the first episode, I think, sort of very randomly.
Can I just
Freddie,
say at this point, I don't want to ruin the show for anybody else, but at this point, I knew Kaz wasn't going because it's a reality show and they want a little bit of jeopardy. And you want, in the 100 meter, well, let's say the 400 meters, you want the one coming from behind to overtake. And I'm like, if they're starting with the votes for Kaz, then we can be pretty sure Kaz isn't going unless he goes with a landslide. And
yeah,
because they pick the order, obviously. Tonight, we will start with Bob. You're like, why are you starting with Bob? You're starting with Bob because Bob is not going to vote for the person who's going to get,
yeah,
banished.
yeah. It's interesting to pay attention to who they pick to start with and think about why they might be doing that and what they're leading us towards. Uh, Freddie is next and votes for Ellen. Armani votes for Charlotte and says, you're just linked too much to these negative situations." Alex goes for Ellen. Charlotte votes for Kaz. Maya, Ellen. So it's an Ellen Kaz situation probably here. So Ellen has three, Kaz has three. On we go. Kaz himself votes for Charlotte. Ellen votes for Linda, and it's sort of the first moment that I remembered. Oh, the focus seems to have shifted away from her now. So actually, she sort of escaped attention for now. That's interesting. Jake goes for Ellen rather than Linda, which I was surprised at. I thought he would still focus on Linda, but no, he's been swayed. Anna also votes for Ellen. Yeah, she says, maybe the way you keep getting emotional, it's because it's a sign of guilt. Mina and Leanne both vote for Charlotte. Leon goes for Ellen. So at this point, Ellen would need to receive no more votes now to be safe. And in fact, I think all the remaining votes would have to be for Kaz or Charlotte to make a difference. So it's not looking good for Ellen. Dan's next in votes for Freddie, which seems very random. He just says he doesn't think it's Ellen, and he thinks that Freddie was one of the people to bring up Ellen's name, so that makes him suspicious of him. And then Linda goes ahead and votes for Ellen, meaning she's done for. And the last two votes, Livy, Tyler, they also both vote for Ellen. Poor Ellen, out she goes. She stands up and she says, "Despite this outcome, I really love you all." There we have that phrase again. They have all fallen in love within a very short space of time. And in Welsh, she tells them, "I am a faithful." They seem horrified. Nine of these people voted for her, so they have completely got it wrong again. Unless they did it deliberately, we'll come back to that. It seems like most of them are pretty devastated. They really thought she actually was a traitor. Livy, in
Mm.
particular, gets very upset, and Claudia has a bit of chat with them and then says, "I end with this very rare comment. I'll see you all at breakfast, because of course there's no murder tonight." Surprise, surprise. Armani speaks first once Claudia's left.
Hmm.
She says, maybe that's a lesson for us all. We need to be mindful. People have different personalities. I'm sort of just on the verge of shouting at the TV now, like, "Armani, stop talking." Uh, Olivia gets upset because she thinks it was her fault that Ellen went. She voted for Ellen tonight and the previous night. She got it so wrong. And she tells us that she thought being a faithful was the easy option, but actually it's incredibly difficult. Um, we get Alex and Maya talking about how they need to start thinking differently. I think we've moved off from the round table. We're in a different room in the house now. Um, they're picking up on all the wrong things. Their tactics aren't working so far. And Maya admits she might need to look at her sister.
Mm.
Alex also thinks Armani is maybe just a bit too confident, and they need to be able to question her. We, in a minute or two, he also says the same thing to another group, including Mina, who's a traitor, sitting listening to this. We've
Mm.
got a bit of chat in the kitchen. Jake is back on the Linda train. He notices how adamant you mentioned this. He says, she was really adamant about Kaz not being a traitor. Why did she say it so confidently? Something's not right. But he seems to also think it's because Kaz is a traitor. He sort of suggests, oh, there's some weird connection between those two. Why was she defending him? So I think he was implying that he thinks Kaz is a traitor as well. So he's half right.
Mm.
It's time for the turret then. Even though there's no murder tonight, the traitors are still going to get together and discuss how things are going. Mina's really annoyed that they can't murder anyone. Linda insists what you suggested before. Like they kind of had to just play the mission properly. They couldn't really very overtly sabotage it. It would look too bad.
Yeah.
And then Armani does this thing. She tells Linda and Mina that she's got a bit of advice for them. She thinks they need to be a bit more assertive. They need to throw more theories out there.
Here
And
we go. This
I,
is my third word, but I promise you, I have invented this one. This is Armani splaining.
yes.
She is Armani splaining to the others how they should be. You got to be more vocal. When she said that, I was like, "What?" You know, sometimes they do a lot with editing
Hmm.
to make the reactions, but I was like, "No, she literally said that. I cannot believe she said those words." Yeah, you guys need to be more vocal. Wow, Armani splaining. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I will be proved completely wrong. Maybe Armani's gonna fly ahead and make it to the final or win it, but I really just like, oh, these are not good signs. Like, and Mina does not take it very well. She tells us she thinks Armani is doing too much.
Yeah.
Linda then, I think in a little bit of retaliation, says to Armani, well, you're not completely out of suspicion. She says,
Hmm.
Leanne brought your name up today.
Yeah.
Um, and Armani's just sort of like, yeah, yeah, well, that's okay. I don't mind, bit of
Mm,
suspicion on me. Okay, like, yeah, one person saying your name is not a big deal, maybe.
mm.
Um, there's more than one person bringing
Yeah.
up her name though. And Armani continues to say she thinks she's playing really well. She's appearing
Yeah.
genuine. She's got theories about different suspects. She's quite pleased with herself. And
Yeah, it's the way she says it as well, isn't it? She doesn't just go, "Oh no, I think I'm doing that." She was like, "Nah, I'm killing it. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great."
yeah, and the episode pretty much ends with a bit of Mina in confessional, and she says that confidence is turning into cockiness. If she's going down, I'm not going to be on the boat with her.
Yeah.
And this is where our episode pretty much ends.
Yeah, just before we leave the turret, I just have to say, because I'm so happy to be back in the turret, because first of all, I actually really love the decor of it. I think it's super creepy. And I'm only saying that because some of the other versions that I've seen, like sometimes it's a cave, like a dungeon, sometimes it's like a little side room, or in the case of New Zealand, it seems to be an IKEA showroom. Like we are meeting in the Traitors IKEA showroom. I don't know what they were thinking. So I'm happy they're back in the turret, not only because it's really spooky and I love the atmosphere in there, but also I don't think I've told you this in the time we've known each other, Matthew, but have I ever told you about my turret?
No, you haven't.
I have a turret in my flat.
Are you in the turret right now?
I'm not in the turret,
Okay.
I'm below the turret. You enter the turret by crawling through like a hobbit door. I mean, this sounds almost like too weird to believe, doesn't it, really? You crawl through the door, a little hobbit door. You're in the turret. It's like a Victorian turret. It has 14 windows. You got views of Crystal Palace, Croydon, Beckenham. Like you can see the whole of Southeast London. I saw the fireworks for New Year's Eve from the turret, so I could see a panoramic view. And so when the first series of the UK Traitors came out and they were like, every night the traitors meet in the turret. I paused it and was screaming into my phone, they've got a turret. Oh my God, I can go into my turret and I can plot in a perfidious way who I'm going to murder. I don't just if anyone's listening, I don't actually murder people, but I can go in there. I actually go in there to meditate, but I could go in there and plot. So when you finally come around to my flat, I would invite you into my traitorous turret. Or will I? Because it just sounds like such a weird thing to say, doesn't it? But there we go. There we
Yes. Of course, listeners, remember we are playing a game. We are trying to sneak in a little lie to one
go.
another somewhere in this
I'm doing
episode.
it very subtly. I'm doing it
Very
very
subtle.
subtly.
Of course, you're doing a great job because you're throwing out these things that could so obviously be a lie that now I have no idea. I want it to be true. I want you to have a turret because I'm obsessed with turrets.
Okay.
This is a very specific reference, but remember Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the TV show from
Mm-hmm.
sort of late 90s, I think. Late, yeah. Um, every time there was an establishing shot of Sabrina's house, they had a turret, and I was not that that's the only turret I've ever seen in my life, but every time I saw it, I thought I one day want a house with a turret in it.
Wow.
So my dream could be fulfilled by visiting your turret if it exists.
If it exists, but I mean, it's just so hard to tell, isn't it? Because I'm such a good actor because, I did drama at A level, so I'm using all of my skill.
Yes. We shall see very soon.
Mhm.
But yes, I'm also happy to see them in the turret, and these are the closing moments of our episode. Final thoughts on the episode then. Matthew, how are the traitors doing generally?
That's a tricky one to answer. There's like three answers to it, really. Armani, we've covered. Like, she's like, wow. The thing is, I maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think she's in as much danger as we might think. Because if I'm really going into like double think, triple think, like, bluffing and all of that. But I do think it's a very valid traitor's tactic to be the most aggressive traitor hunter, to be
Mhm,
going around going, I think it could be this one, I think it could be that one, because you'd think, well, a traitor would never do that, and I think that's her approach. I suspect she's just not doing that very well because we've seen on other versions. I'm thinking of Kira from, recent season. I won't say which one, who went around and was very much, and it really worked because she was quite aggressive, like, but she was a traitor. So I'm 50-50 on Armani. I think she's, they're setting it up like she's going to get her comeuppance because of the Armani splaining, because of her, patronizing really the other two traitors, which it's early for her to be doing that.
mhm.
Mina is just queen. I mean, she's killing it. As soon as she is so charming on screen. I think it's just the Scouse accent as well. Like, for international listeners, Scouse means from Liverpool, and like it's she's so, I don't know, she's just got something about her. She's like enjoying the game, but she's taking it seriously. I really like her. Now, Linda, very nearly out in the first episode, and now all the heat seems to, well, not all the heat, but in terms of the votes, she's not getting votes anymore. That's always really weird, isn't it? Where it's like, hang on a minute, you nearly voted her out in the first round table, and then almost no one voted for her in the second round table. Uh, I don't, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can see a world in which they just forget about her and she just goes right the way through, but I don't think so because I think she's going to slip up again.
Yeah, I'm with you on pretty much all of that. I think Linda will probably be the first of the three to go um, relatively soon. I think Armani will make it a bit further. I it's like I actually do agree with what you say that she probably is doing quite a good job of appearing so eager to find traitors.
Mm,
That's not immediately suspicious, perhaps, but so I don't think she's going to make it all the way. I think eventually people are going to go, "You're just so loud. Something is going on here." I think Tyler, what he noticed will become important. That if she's such a great traitor hunter and she's so keen to question everyone and she's telling everybody what everybody else is thinking, at some point she's never going to get murdered. I wonder if the players are going to pick up on that and say, why have you not been
mm,
murdered off yet? If you seem like this natural leader and you're desperate to find the traitors and you're very outspoken about it, why haven't
yeah.
the traitors just gotten rid of you? So I wonder if that will be her downfall. And
That's a very good point. I hadn't actually thought of that, and you're quite right. And this often happens. Someone who is being a really good traitor and really playing at being a good faithful goes a certain point in the game, and suddenly everyone's like, hang on a minute, hang on a minute, you're a traitor. And then they get voted off like unanimously.
yeah. Um, I also am loving Mina. I think she's going to do really well. Very interestingly, though, if you see the Traitors have their sort of spin-off show on BBC, Traitors Uncloaked. I actually haven't watched it, but I've watched. They do these reveals, so the banished and murdered contestants get to find out who the traitors were, and they show. There's a clip of Ellen and Keith together. They find out who the remaining traitors are, or the existing traitors are, not remaining. And it's really funny because right before Keith opens up the paper and Keith says, "Oh, Ellen, who do you think?" And Ellen says Mina. Ellen says, "I think Mina's a traitor." And then they open up and she's
Oh.
proved right. And I was really surprised that Ellen had picked up on that. I don't think anyone else has.
Wow.
But it
Okay, so
was,
we've got some editing going on here.
yeah,
They're leading us towards Armani being the first traitor out. That I mean, it might just be Ellen. That
it
is
might just
interesting. I
be
haven't
her.
watched Uncloaked yet. I watched the first one, but then because I watched the first, it's complicated the way the BBC are releasing it. They released two episodes, but only one Uncloaked, then the other Uncloaked, and now tonight, as we record on the Friday, there's a third episode. Like, yeah, complicated. I haven't watched the second Uncloaked yet, but now, oh goodness me, that is a. I never would have guessed that Ellen would have thought that Mina was a
Yeah,
traitor.
very interesting. So I would, and if you just want the little clip itself, it's on the BBC Sounds Instagram. They've got these little clips of them finding out. So very interesting that one. Um, are again, this is a very big, broad question. Any faithfuls standing out to you as doing a good job? Anyone doing any smart things?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because there are just so many of them, and obviously there's loads that we just haven't really engaged with, like Francesca. We don't know anything about her whatsoever, which makes me think that she might be in it for the long haul.
Mm,
Let's see. Um, yeah, I'm finding that hard to know because again, it's like you need to make a bit of an impact so that you don't get murdered. But it's really like the Goldilocks, isn't it? The idea that not too hot, not too cold. You've got to get it just right. You have to be vocal enough, not too quiet. You need to be like not too dumb and also not too smart. Like, there's so many. I mean, ideally, you just need to be yourself. But if you're worried that you're going to get heat on you, you have to be balancing all these different factors.
hmm.
Very, very difficult. And I can't make any predictions. It's too early. It's too many of them.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm really looking forward to seeing how the sisterhood of Maya and Armani plays out. It will be
mm,
fascinating if Armani is absolutely brutal and gets rid of Rowan's sister, because everyone else then goes, well, she wouldn't have done that to her sister. Look how close they
yeah,
are. Or if Maya's going to figure out that Armani probably is a traitor and
yeah,
keep it a secret, or does she try and get her own sister out at around it? Like, there's
yeah.
so many great possibilities that could happen there.
Yeah, and like a lot of people, I thought it was a shame when they came in and said, "Oh, well, it's just so obvious, we're sisters. We have to just say we're sisters." I think that was also a producer's decision. I don't think they decided for them, but I think a producer said, "Okay, girls, what are you going to do? How do you want to play this?" And they were like, "Okay, cool. So if you're going to just say that you are sisters, please say it early on in the
Yeah,
train, so there's no ambiguity." I think that was a little bit of producer, I won't say interference, but just storytelling, let's
yeah.
say, in terms of how they set it up. I'm always very distracted by Maya and Armani because they really remind me of a pair of girls that I worked with. I worked with a girl band. These girls were much younger. They were like 16 and 18. And yeah, someone at Universal was putting together this duo, actually, which is unusual. And
Hmm.
the concept was UK garage, girl band, two sisters singing
Yeah.
together. It was like crazy. What were they called? Hang on. Amelia and Izzy. So every time I'm like, they just speak exactly the same. They're both from London. Like they've got this kind of speaking very fast as well. Did you notice the subtitles when Armani was speaking? She's like, like, yeah, because they want to show that they want to sell the show internationally. The Americans are going to
I
need
guess.
subtitles for that. If they can't
Yes.
understand Adele on the red carpet, which that's that meme going around, it's like they're going to struggle to understand Armani. But I really like them. They seem really sweet and very
Yeah.
smart. But as I say, I'm just distracted because they remind me of this sadly defunct girl band that I worked with quite a while ago.
And yeah, I think they're great characters on TV. They're really lively. They're very expressive. Yeah, they seem like good fun. I'm excited to see
Mm.
what comes of it. There will be, of course, no murder. Do you have a prediction for the next banishment? Who is banished next?
Oh, it's so hard early on. It's so, so, so hard. I mean, Charlotte seems like she's not long for this world, but then I would have been pretty sure that Linda would have been in their sights for the second one, and she was just off the table altogether. Um, I mean, yeah, the obvious answer is, Kaz or Charlotte because they've already got so much heat on them. Um, Something else would have to come up. I don't think it would be Armani quite so soon unless she really starts to just get weird. The weirdest thing she could do now would be to shut up and go super quiet because it's like, oh,
Hmm.
what happened? Why did
Yeah,
you suddenly change?
yeah. I think Charlotte actually will escape suspicion for a while, and I think Kaz or Linda are going next. If I had to put
Okay.
money on it, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to say Linda is actually going next. I think attention might swing back around to her, perhaps led
Okay.
by Jake. Listeners, this is your golden spot to be heard, by the way. If you want to send in a question, any thoughts, observations on the episode, maybe something that you think we are missing so far in the series, you can send a email. I'll tell you about that very shortly. Or you can send a voice message to memo.fm/the Traidar podcast, and we'll play it here in the podcast and we'll have a chat about your thoughts or your questions. Now, again, listeners, before you forget, Matthew and I have been trying to deceive one another throughout this podcast in our game of lying and deception. Before we reveal our lies, Matthew or MaJiKer, where can we find you online? What are you up to? What should we be checking out? What do we need to know? How do we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, magica underscore. It's MaJiKer.com is my website as well. I'm currently studying for a diploma in coaching, transformative coaching, which is really interesting, quite challenging, but I'm really enjoying it. That's something else that I'm going to add on to what I do because I
Hmm,
like to work with people, mentoring them, helping them find their way through music. Have a new project called Song Club, which is just simply where songwriters come together on Zoom and share some songs, but it's more like a support group, really, because the music industry is really challenging. It's we're in a very difficult time for songwriters, and so I wanted to just try and offer like community and connection for people. So if any of this sounds interesting, if you write songs at any level, if you've written one song, if you've written a million songs, doesn't matter. You're very welcome. Reach out to me on Instagram, and you would be very welcome to come along to Song Club.
brilliant. That sounds fantastic. I've never written a song, but maybe I'll join. I'll just come along and
You write poetry. Little plug for Matthew's poetry. Go and check out his and he writes stories and novels and all kinds of
Yes,
things.
that's true. I do have a poetry collection coming out in a few months. I will mention more about this as the podcast goes on. As for the podcast itself, if you've enjoyed, please subscribe, leave a lovely review on the platform you're using, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, YouTube, wherever it is. And you can follow on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at the Traidar Podcast. And of course, you can also watch the podcast now. If the sounds of our voices aren't enough for you, you can do that on YouTube and Spotify. You can also leave comments on those platforms. You can email me at thetradarpodcast@gmail.com. Again, you can leave a voice message if you want to be heard on the podcast at memo.fm/thetradarpodcast. And one final thing before Matthew and I reveal our lies, if you're enjoying the pod and you want to help me keep it going, you could visit the podcoffee.com page. That's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. Because this, again, this banner and this mug that I've been drinking out of, and this mic cover, and all these different software things that I'm using to edit the podcast and so on, cost a little bit of money. You don't have to subscribe to anything. It's not Patreon. You can put in £1 if you felt like it. And there is no obligation to do that. It's just an option. And thank you to all the lovely people who've done that so far. Matthew, it is time for a reveal of the Traidar traitor. I confess that I have lied to you throughout this podcast. Have you lied to me?
Yes, and I might have told one and a half lies because I wasn't sure that my first lie was big enough.
I did the exact same thing. I actually told you two
Oh,
lies because I was worried that one of them wasn't good enough.
okay.
So I'm helping you. I'm giving you more options to choose
Yeah.
from. I I've got a couple of suspicions for you.
Mm-hmm.
I so I'm gonna kick things off now. I think you were very deliberately throwing some things out there for me. You
Yeah.
gave me a Welsh words. You gave me
Mm-hmm.
toop. You gave me perfidious.
Yeah.
You drew attention to those words and suggested that they may be lies. I think you
Mm-hmm.
are so good at this and you know so much about the traitors. You're deliberately drawing attention to those things because actually they are your lie and you don't want me to guess them, or maybe not. Of course, the turret could be a whole lie.
I mean,
Maybe there
come on,
is.
who I've got a flat who actually has and let's see, I'm like metagaming now. Who actually has a turret as part of their in Southeast London? That cannot be possible, can it? See, my acting is coming
Mm-hmm.
back into play
Mm-hmm.
here.
It could be something else completely. This you might have just thrown away some little line, and it's been buried beneath all of this stuff.
Can I just say something
Like,
else as well? And this is not influencing you in any way. We've known each other for I don't know what, about 6 months or something. The level of subterfuge that I would have needed to never mention the fact that part of my flat has a turret, that either makes me extremely perfidious or just very cunning, or maybe, anyway, just putting that out there.
no, this is see now you're
I'm over
you're
egging the pudding, aren't I? Yeah.
you. It is weird that you've never mentioned it before, but maybe it just slipped your mind, and you sort of you're so used to the turret that you don't think of it as unusual, so it didn't occur to you to mention it to me.
Hmm.
I I'm gonna. It's
I'm
either
feeling
the Welsh
this has
word.
become very high stakes, and I do apologize, but I love this so much. I'm having the time of my life.
You also said you threw out a little mention that you did drama at A level, and I thought maybe that was it. Maybe it was just that. It was one little thing, and you're going to say,
Mm.
haha, I didn't do drama at A level. But you're a musician, so it kind of would make sense that that would be the kind of thing you'd be interested in at school. Right, I'm gonna go for it and say that toop, maybe it is a Welsh word, but it doesn't mean what you said it meant. That's your lie.
That's not correct. Tup, I've been told by my Welsh friend Gary, does indeed mean not very intelligent. However, you did actually mention my half-lie in your deliberations,
Did you do
which is
drama at
that
GCSE?
no, I didn't do drama, but I did do theatre studies. Now I know that that was my little half-lie, which I thought was pathetic. At the same time, drama means that you're acting, and I didn't really act. I wasn't really acting. I did
Okay.
theatre studies where I like wrote scripts and did like
Yes.
lighting and direction and stuff. So I did theatre studies A level. I didn't do drama A level. So you did kind of circle
I was
around my
almost there.
half-lie. There was actually, though, another bigger lie which is
Was it
that
the girl
right at the
group?
end, it was the girl group. However, again, I was very sneaky because I did work with a girl group who did UK Garage, and there were two of them, but they weren't sisters, and one of them was not called Izzy. It
Oh,
was Amelia and yeah, someone else.
I, I should have written that down because I did think, oh, this could be a lie. And then I thought, no, this is too big a story to be
Yeah,
fabricated. This is too obvious, and I just ignored it.
yeah.
I was
So
so
you know
caught
what
up
that
in the turret.
Well, you know what that means, Matthew. It means that I literally do have a turret as part
Yes,
of my flat. You are welcome. When you are next in Southeast London, you come round. We are going to crawl through the little hobbit door and we're going to enjoy the views of Croydon and Crystal Palace with my 14 windows in my Traitors turret.
I thought maybe he's lying about the number of windows, and it's like a really like small numerical lie. Right, I'm going to the airport in about an hour. I'm going to make a detour, and I'm going to stop at your place and visit this turret.
Yeah, okay. Just ask the pilot maybe, just could you just circle over? Do you know what? My turret was very nearly on it wasn't location. It was a spin-off. Kirsty Allsop did this is very UK
Was it
content.
called Turret, Turret, Turret?
It wasn't called Turret. Although I wish it was. It was called Best of Both Worlds or something like that, and it was about living a slightly country life but in the city and all of that.
Um,
So, and they filmed the house next to me, and they had a drone shot that just cut off before it reached the turret because they were like, "Oh, we are in the area of Southeast London I live in," and I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's the turret!" Yeah. As soon as we hang up, I am sending you photos of the turret, and you
I
are going
can't
to
wait.
get turret envy.
I'm very excited and also annoyed that I didn't catch your lie. Um, Matthew, what do you think I lied to you about?
Well, I'm very thrown by the fact that you say there were two lies because I feel like you didn't really say anything. You were very on script talking about the show, and I watched it twice, so I'm hoping there weren't like lies, like just inventing a fake character called, Penelope or something. Um, the only one that I got was the game that you played on New Year's Eve. That was I've totally forgotten what it's called now, but you said there was a name for it, and
It's
oh yeah,
herd mentality.
herd mentality. That was the only one where I'm like, I feel like it was the only thing you said that wasn't that was outside of the traitors, and it yeah, and I feel you said in the last episode that you were playing werewolf. So I mean, how many games can you play all at the same time? So I am going to say that herd mentality is not a game that you played on New Year's Eve.
Okay, I can reveal that on New Year's Eve, I did play Werewolf, and I did play a game called Herd Mentality.
Okay.
However, you get half a point
Hmm.
because my lie was stuck within that. I did play Herd Mentality, but I lied and said it's my favorite game. I brought it with me. Actually, I had never played it before, and it wasn't my game. Someone else brought
Okay.
it. So you were right to pick up on the herd mentality.
Okay.
You were just about there. So well done. My other lie, because I was worried about that one, when you talked about Traitor Sweden, I said, "Oh, I've got a list on a Word document of all the seasons I'm going to
Okay.
watch," and that's not actually true. I do want to watch Traitor Sweden because you've recommended
Hmm.
it. So it's on a mental list, but I pretended that I had literally made a list, and I haven't actually done that.
That was quite a good lie. That was sneaky.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Matthew, listeners, maybe you caught us out. Maybe it was blindingly obvious to you what we were lying about. I don't know. I hope you had fun deliberating about the turret, though. Thank you for joining me on the Traidar once again, Matthew. It's been so great to have you. I will put
Hmm.
your links in the episode description so people can find you online and hopefully some songwriters can join Song Club.
Hmm.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I will be back very soon with our recap of episode 3. Until then, keep us on your Traidar. Bye bye.
Bye.